Hey guys, we got the Talk Go here. This is the 4-pin connector. This is a Hummel company manufactures this seal tight, and it is the size PG7. And we're going to remove this. This has got our 4-pin connectors in there, so we got to go carefully get these SMB connectors out. And we've recovered that, or removed it. Very important. We're going to set that aside. And what we're doing is we got the Hummel PG7, I believe it is. As you can see, there's one that's already been plugged. We've got the appropriate plug with appropriate threading, and it also has an O-ring seal, just like the other one does. You can see there, it's got a little bit of appropriate lubrication on it. Just a little bit there. We're just going to go ahead and install this here and give it a little bit of let the O-ring do its job. We don't need to go too tight on these. Even though I got a nice big handle on this, we don't want to kill it. We just want it to be sealed. And it is sealed. And you may ask, why would you remove both of those? Why would we remove our data connection to our O2 sensors? It's an appropriate question for those of you that dive CCR, manually operated CCR. We need to be able to monitor our PO2 value. Make sure these connectors are disconnected, and one-handed, pop the lid for the grand reveal. And there we have the Symbios wireless O2 sensor, or O2 transmitter. We got our 3 O2 sensors. And that is a Fisher connector that they originally built that with. They claim that they may be providing that at some point in time in a 4-pin configuration. Irregardless, the Fisher has caused many divers a headache and a problem for many years, and we're well aware of that. Narked at 90 is selling this gear, but they sold me the cable set up into the point into the left-hand corner there, much longer, of course. But I told them that I did not want them to terminate the ends. I would do that my own self, so I could make it the custom length that I actually needed and wanted, specifically and precisely. But they did take the inside of that Fisher connector, and they did backfill it with a appropriate two-part marine epoxy for sealing. So that where the black comes into the connector at the bottom there, that has been put into a vacuum and 2-part epoxy. And then I also have an appropriate 2-part electronic potting compound epoxy for marine applications for this very specific situation. Right here where the heat shrink is, in that area, I have backfilled that with epoxy to keep water ingress in case the unit gets flooded and any moisture comes into this environment in here. It'll be protected, and then all the way up to the, let me put this down so I can use my one hand here to illustrate another point. Small point, but it's kind of important for longevity of the connectors lasting over time, even though we don't disconnect and reconnect the sensors all that often, hopefully. Only when they're being replaced or if they need to be pulled out to be dried for some reason. Right here, I've elected to use a 90-degree SMB connector. The point being is when you go to press them together, you're putting your thumb or forefinger, if you're going the opposite direction, for example on this one, and you're pressing them in, even though you're not putting a lot of pressure. It does help mitigate any extra strain on the cables that are soldered to the connections inside. And this has been backfilled with the 2-part marine potting compound epoxy, and the heat shrink has been put over it more as a strain relief more than anything. And as we have O-rings to secure the O2 sensors, it's a great idea. And so therefore, I actually had some O-rings, Viton O-rings around, and putting them around the springs. The springs are still capable. These are pretty thicker O-rings, not super thin. They're actually quite a bit thicker than these here. So when you push down on it, it's not even affecting the O-ring as much. And it doesn't look real tight here, but this one is good amount of pressure against the sensor. So as an example, the sensor is not moving around at all. It is actually set in there, and the springs are still capable of doing their job with the screen against the sorb, and it clears everything and it fits in there. So with that being said, I normally will, and all times after a dive, I will disconnect in case there's any change to the sensors. It could wake up the transmitter and wear out the battery. It'll probably go to sleep if it's just sitting with it closed inside of the unit. But it's best just to disconnect this. I can leave the sensor inside of the container and just disconnect this when it's not in use. And therefore, this will not, without any millivolts signal going into this, it won't wake it up. And the battery will last much longer. Anyway, that's what we got. And I'm very excited to get this going.